Since I think most people are here anyway that are going to be here, anybody who comes late, well, I'll just have to catch up. I'm Russell Clark. I'm the OMEX Territory Manager for everything south of Red Deer and everything north of the Peace Country. So hopefully we've got a couple of good speakers today that will give you a bit of insight on plant nutrition and what we can do to maximise what we're doing in the fields with you guys anyway. Jordan is going to be the first guy that will be up here. He's a farmer out of Bruce. He's an agronomist. He's worked in selling fertiliser and things like that. But basically now his goals are to work in agronomy and just try and improve what you guys can get for yields out of what you put into the system. Anyway, I'll give it up to young Jordan here. He just turned 39 yesterday, poor old guy.
Yeah, well, thank you, Russell. So, like Russell said, I farm up in a small town of Bruce, which is southeast of Edmonton, about 60 miles. Farm with my wife. We farm 2,200 acres. We seed canola, wheat, peas, and oats as our primary crops. I also grow pedigree grains as well. I've been lucky to work with people like Abdel for a few years now. Helped me a lot in understanding the importance of balancing out your crop, your plant, and as well as on your soil side. So I'm a CCA, I guess. Run a small ag retail doing agronomy up in our area. I know a few of the guys here. I've seen them a couple different times, been up to the place for tours and everything else. So thank you very much. But I'm a very informal speaker. I'm just a farmer. Do this once in a while. So any questions or anything you guys have, just interrupt. Go ahead, ask me whatever you want to know, or call my BS if I happen to have some in your opinion. So I guess basically I started doing different things years ago on the farm. This 2008 trial, we're doing starter fertilizers. I live in a high sodium, low pH type ground. A lot different than most of the area down here, but you guys have pockets of it as well. So this is kind of what we were doing. This is the first stuff we did. This trial was actually done in 2011, right across the road from my house, a wheat trial. And we're just trying, putting 1152 of the seed, starter phos, and then no 1152 of the seed. So this one here's got no phosphate in the seed row. This one's 1152 seed row, and that's using the starter. Just the difference we had in root development, trying to get that out of the ground faster, even more root development. So one of the first things we played with. Up on the top right here, a little further on in our history of doing it, we were doing peas and stuff, and then that's when we started playing with some of these weird things like Abdel will be talking to you guys about later, trying different human PTR type things and soil stimulants. So taking a program we already had and adding different things to it to increase root development, primers, zinc, manganese, different things on these trials up here. So just a little basic of what we're doing. So this is an old trial we did. This was done in 2012, this one. We did replicated trials on this, where the peas were, and where this is replicated trials over 4 years with the same spots and the same fertility recommendations and played with different things. We've seen this year here I played with some Phoenix, and actually had some starter pea and some manganese in. And we actually seen in this crop of oats, we saw a 40 bushel an acre increase that in manganese. Half a liter an acre for sure on manganese, and oats really responds well to manganese. So my $4 an acre application of manganese gave us just under 40, it was 307 bushels extra. That was what we were missing.
I think that's the biggest thing that a lot of guys have to appreciate is it's whatever you're lacking, and you can have crazy results like that. $4 in a 40 bushel increase. You're not going to see that every time unless you hit what you're missing.
Yeah, exactly right, Jason. Like the way I'd word it is when we're doing our fertilizer, we always worry about our NPK and S, but actually that article that was Western producer 3 weeks ago, I think it was, from that producer in the States, if you're at 512 bushel an acre corn. If you read through it, he's actually only fertilizes the minimums, is the way he does it. So in other words, when he says he fertilizes the minimums, he just worries about which nutrient he needs most. Whichever one he needs most, whichever is the most lowest in the crop, is what he uses. He doesn't tell you what he's putting down. I've heard him speak before, but what he's doing is balancing the plant. So one of the main things you got to do is soil test. Everyone here imagines soil tests. I know anyone that worked with Jason would be doing a good job of soil testing for sure. I know he's done a lot of them. We have to know what's in the ground before we do it. We need to evaluate past fertility practices, establish future applications, help determine economic return, and identify the factors. If we don't know what your dirt is, we can't give you a recommendation. Anyone that gives you a recommendation without looking at your dirt isn't giving you a proper recommendation. It's the basis of what we have to know before we can figure out what you're going to be able to produce on what you're growing. And then I guess the other side of that one is oops, I skipped back here. And just investigating environmental impact. So we got to watch about how much salts and stuff we put on. And not just that, the other thing we find out on this, lots of people have probably seen this before too, but knowing your type of soil type, looking at your sand, silts, and clays, or in this case your CCs on the top here, determines the amount of calcium, potassium, phosphate, and magnesium you should have in your soil. So knowing what your soil, what type of soil you have, helps us to determine what you should have for what you should have in it. And soil is extremely variable. This is a sample taken actually off my dad's land straight south of my farm, 1.5 miles. And in this field, we even have more strong variances, but we have a pH from 6.2 to 8.1, sodium up to 11%, borons in the tank on lots of 0.5, 101.6, which is actually okay. Calcium levels basically go from high down to very low, extremely variable. And every land out there that I see is extremely variable.
Those are all 0 to 6 inch?
These are all 0 to 6s, yes.
And so your boron ranges from 0.5 to 1.6,
Yeah,
but you've got a CEC on that 1.6 of 30.
correct,
So even that's not high enough.
correct.
Yeah, so your boron's not right, your boron's not adequate at any
No, it's
sample.
close to adequate for what you grow for that crop side. And boron is a shooting number, I guess, is the way to word it. There is no great balance, as I'll say, when we get a CEC up into that higher range, which should almost be 6 ppm.
I think he says 3.5 for,
I talked to him a couple
30.
weeks ago and he figured even higher.
So what do you do when you got a 30 CBC and you got a 0.2?
0.2?
We're working with soils here in Southern Alberta at 0.2
and lots.
with a 30 CBC.
You buy some out the boron from
Absolutely.
You do, because you need it. It would be one of your limiting factors. And boron, as far as micronutrients is, it's the king of micronutrients. It's 200 times more, used 200 times more than any other micronutrient. So it's actually the one that if you're going to play with on the micro side, if you're low, it's the one that's going to give you the best response or even the most in the plant. So even though it's a micro, it's still a major role of what's used. So yeah, just looking at our basic variances of that, and like you said, the CEC changes on our calcium, changes the amount of calcium we have in the soil, the amount of boron required, and also our nutrient holding capacity, basically how much nitrogen we can hold in the soil, is determined by what type of soil we have. And I threw this one on, it's actually not quite as typical as some of mine. We'll have sodiums way higher and pHs way lower in areas, but this would be more general to see what you guys would have from here from what I've experienced. You guys have a lot more closer to neutrals or 8s in a lot of this country, but there's also pockets of 5s too. So the other thing we're going to do, the other thing that I kind of started looking at was reading different books like this one, Weeds Controlled Without Poisons. Basically, I'm not going to read this whole little bit, but what I want to point out is the lady someone. And one of the things that increases lady sum, it indicates you have low calcium, high phosphate, high manganese and high zinc. So the other weeds and every other weeds and stuff we got, they got other books here too that basically you can kind of tell what your soil is by what it's growing. So different plants are in higher sodiums, different plants in different conditions. So examples: ragweed, drought and okay; quackgrass, compacted soils and lone peat. That one I always found kind of weird because quackgrass in our area used to be a big problem 25 years ago, 30 years ago, before we started using Roundup or more conventional tillage spread it around. But we've got extremely high phosphate in our soil. But our pH is really low and we have factors like aluminum that make it not available. So it does kind of make sense on that side. The other one here is sow thistle, Canada thistle, dandelion, kind of all fall in the same. They actually show low calcium and excess mag. We've seen really low calcium levels in the plant, even on high calcitic soils, because the magnesium is so high. So there's other factors that play into that as well. And then there's also deficiencies because of and nutrition. So basically some of our diseases, some of the more common diseases, fusarium and potassium I always found kind of interesting. The amount of potassium in the plant will actually determine, or the less potassium we have in the right ratio in the plant, we have a higher incidence of fusarium. Ergot, everyone knows. Dr. Ian Evans, whose names are here at the bottom, pointed that out 25 years ago, and we knew that if we had enough copper in the plant, that we reduced our ergot in our wheat, or in our wheat primarily. So knowing this is what Jason was talking about, a lot of them. Everyone's probably seen this barrel before, the leaking barrel, with the different nutrients, but we always worry about NPK and S, but lots of times it's something else. Your maximum yield potential is basically your minimum, or is based on your minimum nutrient. So whatever you're the lowest on is what's going to be your least yield potential. We got other factors we can't control, like Mother Nature. We can't control rain, we can't control temperature, we can't control other instances, but we can control what we put down to try to mitigate the risk of the plant. And pH. pH is huge. We're talking about it. When you get down into these lower pH types, lower pH side, our availability of nutrients really fall off, as well as when you get over to 8. I don't know if any of you guys farm some of this, or farm towards the Brooks country, but I worked with a couple of guys from Tilly, and we have pockets up to 9 in the pH. So their numbers actually fall off the other direction. When you get down into these 5s, they really fall off too. Things like molybdenum are basically non-existent. And molybdenum is one of the main elements for nitrification in the plant, correct?
And phosphorus as well.
So basically, pH, once we get above 8, we start really losing yield potential, and once we get below 6, ideal soil should be between 6 and 7 too. We really got on this pH kick a little while ago. I actually sit on the Canola Council's Club Committee, and we're finding on the Club Committee that any of the work that we're doing on the club root, if we can get our pH around that 7.2, we're reducing club root spores by up to 95%, just by adjusting the pH of the soil. And I don't know if it's necessarily just pH either, because some of the stuff that they do in Ontario where the pHs are more desirable, they're still having club root instances, but they don't have enough available calcium. So they'll actually have high pH soil, but it's high pH and with unavailable calcium, they're applying gypsum on it to get available calcium into the plant and helping reduce club root.
So we've got a situation in southern Alberta where we've got high mag, low calcium. The magnesium holds the pH artificially high.
Correct.
And so you look at the soil test and you think, okay, we've got 7, 7.5, 8 even on some fields I can think of. But you look at the calcium, there's nowhere sufficient calcium for the health of that plant. And so sometimes that's the problem, is you look at one number.
Correct.
And you get too focused in on one number and you don't understand what's going on with the rest of that soil test.
Everything's balanced. And in that instance, from what I've studied, and we've done a little bit of playing with it, I don't know as much high mag, higher pH soil, they use gypsum. They'll actually add calcium gypsum product. The sulfur will go ahead and help displace some of the magnesium. And then what you're left over is calcium. So you're actually increasing your available calcium in the soil and dropping your mag off and then it balances your pH. So even in high pH soil, if it's a magnesium problem, we have a problem with availability of calcium. And that's where they're fighting with clubroot in eastern Canada.
Most places in Saskatchewan and Manitoba where clubroot was found, they have high mag and low calcium.
Yeah.
But their pH is high, and everybody thinks we have enough calcium in the soil, but the pH is driven by magnesium more than anything.
Because magnesium drives pH twice as much as
It's
calcium.
twice as high as calcium.
So they're artificial pushes it. So gypsum, one of the products we played with first was this type of thing. Basically gypsum, typically a pearl product, we're bringing in mine stuff up into central Alberta. It's 21% gypsum, 17% sulfate sulfur, and it's got no soil acidification to it. Some of the other products we're using, like ammonium sulfate or elemental sulfur, every time we apply 100 pounds of product of ammonium sulfate, we have to put down 120 pounds of calcium carbonate or lime to counteract the pH that we're dropping. So using some of these other products, ammonium sulfate and elemental sulfurs, elemental sulfur not being as bad as what AMS is, we're driving our pH lower. And every time we put it on, we have to counteract it. So yeah, right here, chart saying limestone needs to offset acidity from nitrogen fertilizer. Pound of egg line per pound of N. So ammonium sulfate, for every pound of N you put down the ammonium sulfate, you need 7 pounds of lime to counteract it. Even ammonium phosphates and hydrous ammonia, UAN, all of them drive our pH lower. We actually seen that colleagues of mine at a colony he deals with actually up in the Vulcan country, and they did ammonium sulfate heavy rates, 200 to 300 pounds of spines for 10 years, and they drove the pH of the soil from the low 6s down to below 5 by using ammonium sulfate. They got their 130 bushel barleys, they used to get down into the 60 bushel barleys. So the only way to really combat it was the lime. They were getting huge results at the beginning, but they actually acidified their soil too much. So it happens, and it happens at higher rates. So we got another colleague of mine down towards Cape Tabor, same thing, on potato ground. They've had a lot of problems with the salt, so they put down potatoes just because of fertilizer usage put down. Putting on a pile of acidic fertilizers actually really hurt their soil, salted it. So they're actually using lime to try to counteract some of the things that they've done. Same type of thing, just at another scale, even in hydrous ammonia. 100 pounds of nitrogen with an hydrous ammonia takes 150 pounds of calcium, lime to counteract. So this is the first trial I ever did on gypsum. This was done in 2012 as well. Right hand side here, we applied gypsum seed placed, 50 pounds an acre. Left hand side, traditional blend from each, 60 pounds an N. Would have been 20 pounds of sulfur with ammonium trisulfate liquid. We just cut the sulfur out to match the sulfur on the right hand side. So there would have been about 7 pounds taken, added from the gypsum here and 7 pounds taken out. This is on soil pH around 5.8 right behind my shop. That's the one that was done. Freddie did it up there. But I actually had 7 bushel an acre just by knocking out some of my high salt fertilizer, the low pH fertilizer. 7 bushel an acre, so responded really well. $4 an acre, $5 an acre. The difference is what the price would be by the time I placed it out, and I gained 7 bushels. So I've seen a huge result. I'm going to focus a little more on gypsum down here, but what gypsum is sources out of the USDA. Gypsum is building more productive soil naturally. Agriculture gypsum works as a soil amendment, conditioner, fertilizer to improve soil. Gypsum supplies calcium and plant available sulfate, sulfur without affecting pH, where all the other sulfurs we're using drive our pH lower. Loosens compact and tight clay soils, allowing water and air to penetrate, reduce dissolved phosphorus runoff. Really helps with guys applying manure, adding gypsum, it keeps that phosphate from moving neutralizes salt damage and ice removal, and is 100% more soluble than lime, penetrates soil blood incorporation. So we'll apply this. We started out doing pearled stuff, and then it wasn't as cost effective to try to change soil, so we started actually getting mine gypsum in and applying on top of the ground. And we're, on my ground, on my farm, quite a few of my customers, we've actually started not using traditional sulfur. We'll apply 300 to 500 pounds of gypsum every 2 to 3 years and replace our sulfur needs with gypsum instead of using ammonium sulfate.
So how do you spread that?
Just with the lime spreader is what we're using. It has to be a spin spreader, the stuff we're doing. It's a ground up, it's basically ground up rock. It's mined right out of the Rockies here. There's pearled ones that work really well, but it's too expensive. This stuff here in your country probably about $160 a ton delivered. Pearls that are on $350, $360. The mined is 22% sulfur and 31% calcium, where the pearled is 21% calcium and 17% sulfur. So if you're actually trying to fix soil, we went to the mine one just because I could afford to do it. First stuff we did was actually reclaim drywall if you can get it now. It's cheap with paper removed. Some of the first stuff I got was virtually free, just trucking and $10 a load, but there's not much of it available. The first place where we went and started amending with gypsum, we had great results with. Great results with, and the price was right. So just try to give you guys a different way of thinking on it, I guess. And calcium. Calcium is huge in all plant development. Basically, the way I'd like to, we read all that, but it's basically the building blocks of your plant. It's like the bones, like our bones. It builds the cells in your plant. So even on higher pH soil, lots of times we do not have available calcium. So a gypsum does give you available calcium. Actually, I already have that one in there for some reason. And not just that, some of the other things that we do, besides the importance of calcium, is pH. The difference in pH can really affect your crops. The one I always like to point out is alfalfa. Once our pH gets below 6.2, you've lost half of your yield potential of alfalfa. It can withstand the 8 snow problem, but you start getting into beans and corn over 7.5, you start dropping off. In corn, I think at 8.5 really drops off, if I remember the chart. It's down to 60% of your utilization, or yield potential, I should say. So basically, by having a lower pH, let's just say that your pH is 5.5 in areas, we're going to lose 25% of our input. So if nitrogen's 55 cents a pound, we're applying 75 pounds an acre of nitrogen at $42 an acre. We're losing $10 an acre in a nitrogen application because of our pH. Phosphate is 73 cents a pound. At 25 pounds, we're losing $5. Potassium at 40 cents. And applying 35 pounds, we're losing $4. So we're actually losing $19 an acre of our fertilizer based on our soil characteristics. So some of the things I started looking at when we started doing this. The tilth of your soil. You can see on the left-hand side here, you don't get that hard layer on the top here once you've applied calcium. So this is a sodium and magnesium comparison. This is what after the gypsum application and before a gypsum application on high mag or high sodium soils. Helps break that carbon crust. Lets the water penetrate, get better utilization of water. Gives us more air spaces between. As you can see, the clay particles here are tight, and it lets the water run off. And then flocculated, and then once you disperse it, it lets it go and you have more air channels. More pockets for the water to get in. And you've seen lots of this, Jason?
Yeah, we got soil that just basically seals off they call it gumbo soil down here.
Yeah.
And when you see that sticky gumbo soil, that's high mag, the water can't penetrate it. It's slick like snot. And guys always joke, you know, the land is too wet, too wet, too wet, perfect for about an hour and it's too dry. That's high mag combo soil.
I don't know what your guys' opinion is down here, but in this country, it's expensive to buy land. If I can make some of my lower production land produce more for a few $100s an acre or something over time, it makes a lot more sense than me spending $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 an acre. Some of the irrigated land around here is substantially more than that. If you can make some of this other ground produce more by balancing out your soil, to me it's a better fit than trying to buy more dirt just to farm more. And the variability side of things, I want to touch a little bit on the variable rate. But you guys probably seen this type of thing as well too. Soil that looks picture perfect, see it lots in some of the leveled land down here especially. Like I said, I did a little work around the Kelly area, a little farther east. But on that machine leveled land, you'd see pockets like this. The land looks perfectly flat. You'd walk a few feet and there'd be a completely difference in your soil type. And knowing the variability when you do this stuff is very important. Because we'll have pockets within little areas where pH may change, or mag may change, or sodium may change. So we want to apply different rates based on our soil types and what the problem is in those areas. So if you really get into the amending side and try to fix your soil, I'm a really strong believer in the variable rate. Really strong believer in the variable rate.
So do you grid sample your soil sample?
Yeah, we do grid sample, and I've actually moved into something called soil optics. So I've been grid sampling for 8 years, and then we moved most of them, just about all my ground, except for a few rented quarters, are optics now. Everything else is gridded. Customer-wise, I still got guys doing composites. Most are on grids, and I got a few guys moving into optics just for the price.
Better explain soil optics.
I will, yeah. I'll touch on optics a little bit. But soil optics, this is an example of soil optics, what we're doing on the field. So this here, all these little lines don't really mean nothing, but they're just little data point entries. Like they're not showing us a nutrient or anything like that. But every one of these little squiggles in there is a spot where we capture data. So we're on a sample, we're getting 332 samples per acre. And then these samples under here are grid samples underneath. So that's how we're verifying our numbers. So basically we're taking an x-ray of the soil, referencing it with the soil sample, and getting out some information. So these ones here, we're going to look at these samples here, the difference of them. Structurally, they're walking across the field. You don't actually necessarily see the difference of until you see the crop growing. But in those spots, we got sodium. We've got this one's actually pretty good soil. It's dirty. This one here is magnesium, and this is more balanced as well. But that's just different points that we found without the spectrum between. So the difference in the sand, silts, and clays, where I really like the optic side, is basically your holding capacity. So the difference in size, I threw up this one just to show you the difference in size based on your soil. Very coarse sand, all the way down to clay. So in the same, in 1 gram, you have very coarse sand, you have 90 particles, and here you got clay, you got, what's that, 90 billion? 90 billion. So that's the difference in your holding capacity of your soil, and why we need to know it. So if we're going to amend it, we have a way different application rate for clay than we do for sand. And we also know that a clay soil, if follicularly better, will hold moisture better and other nutrients as well. So it all comes into realization. So can you say change your soil? I got the wrong years in here. I forgot to change it. I used this one here, but this should actually be 2018 in the spring, 2018 in the fall. So the first field we did here, this is my whole half. pH average is 5.6, range of 4.8 to 6.7. Applied CKD with the applied CKD. This is all done with optics, so we actually brought the pH up to 5.8. The range from 4.9 to 7.7. So we are changing the soil. Base saturations of calcium was 32. Moved it to 4, so moved it up 10. On this field as well, we actually got 22 bushel an acre difference in wheat and a grade. So it actually grossed me $190 an acre more per acre. And my cost of doing everything was $180 in the first year. So I actually got my money the first year. And I'll continue to see those type of yields and stuff I've done for at least, that's what we're walking around.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So you can change soil. You can definitely change soil. One of the reasons I want to change this is the club root assessment map. Club root is as big an issue around here as it is up in my country or up by Edmonton. We've developed a program with Trevor Thornton with help of with Adele and a few other guys with knowing the importance of our ratios to determine where club root's going to be more predominant. And at home here, what I really want to show you is a 7 to 8, which is a 70 to 80% chance of club root. I was at 41%. After my lime application, I'm down to 9% into that range. So we're moving in the right direction. We've taken these maps on some of the ground we've done up by Edmonton, just north of Edmonton, where they have confirmed club root really bad. It happened to be optics as well. If you went up and took the scouting map, if you got these oranges and reds, that's exactly where the club roots were going. Club root spores were predominant. And the ratio side of things, like I said at the very beginning there, or one of the things at the beginning, is knowing your balance and keeping everything balanced is extremely important. Knowing your ratios and maintaining the ratios are extremely important. And these are some of the ones that we've been kind of working on. So some of the things we go into the club root assessment map, but also the soil health. This is the type of ratios we're looking at. We don't just look at nitrogen applied or potassium or anything. We're worried about NDS ratios, calcium to magnesium ratios. Calcium to potassium, which changes based on your pH. Calcium and phosphate, which changes with pH. Phosphate to zinc, phosphate to manganese, phosphate to copper, zinc to copper, manganese to zinc, manganese to copper, potassium to boron, and magnesium to potassium. All those are important. Not just worrying about how much NPK and S put down. So you asked before how we apply. This is what we're doing. We're applying with just a lime spreader up in our country. Is what we're doing. So they're just spin spreaders. This was taken up at some of the stuff done at the research center, research field just south Edmonton by Leduc. By changing the soil pH and by adding lime, this is non-treated and this is treated. You look at the amount of cover on the two plants, you can see the difference. That's just by applying lime. So you can reduce your disease and can improve your crop.
Show you're actually looking at the club root then.
Well, it's better than some looking lady. Look at that rustle up there. Hey? The glare from the camera on your head. No. But yeah, no, there's a big difference.
So in your base saturation, if you have calcium below 60% and boron below 1, you're likely going to be threatened by club root greenhouse.
Yeah. The optimum soil on the calcium side, they're saying is 65%. 65 to 75% is your optimal range for calcium. And once you get below 50 or below, you're going to have a great chance of getting club root. And not just club root, there's lots of other diseases and soil health issues.
And weeds as well.
And weeds as well. Does anyone know what he's doing here? Right after the look off, he's holding something up. What's he doing?
This is
Yeah, looking for blind seeds. Why is he looking for blind seeds? Low boron. Exactly. Boron's one of the things I got great passion for. This gentleman here is Dale Anderson. I work with out of Stettler. Him and I approached Dale 4 years ago, and got him to build a product called Sinalco Boron. Because we were having boron deficiencies in our plant, and no matter how much boron we put on, we weren't getting results. So Adele helped us with that by building us a product that works. So boron moves plant sugars up and down the plant daily. During the nighttime, the boron moves plant sugars from the plant to feed the root system, which in turn feeds the soil biology. During the night, soil biology exudes food for the roots, and then boron moves this food from the roots to the plant during the day. This process takes daily. So boron moves your sugars up and down the plant. Extremely important. The other thing it does, I'm not going to do the whole thing of it, but it produces a hormone called GABA. And GABA, basically, you need boron to move it from one side of from one tip of the pod to the other. As it moves back and forth, it puts seeds in there. Anytime that it quits moving back and forth, you get a skin. That's where you're missing your seed. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's kind of the layman's term of it. But remember, boron along with phosphorus moves sugars into the plant daily. So boron, some of the boron problems that people have had is if they don't apply it with phosphate, don't have enough phosphate in the plant, no matter how much boron they apply, also doesn't really affect to make a difference. I stole some slides off of Adele. So this is what happens with boron. Peas on the left, adequate boron, deficient boron. This heat blast on the right, there's a pretty good chance it's a potassium boron relationship. Won't just necessarily be boron, but a potassium boron relationship. Having the right amount of potassium and boron in the plant will produce heat stress and blast. Does anyone know how many peas you're supposed to have in a pod of yellow peas? Or even greens?
How many possible?
What, average 6 or 7?
Should be
What do you
about-
think, what's possible?
It should be an odd number, whatever it is.
Correct, it should be, it's supposed to be 11 when the varieties are growing here. So anytime we get below 11, we've missed out, I guess is the theory. And anytime it's an even number, that means we've aborted one of the peas. It's always an odd. So if you open up, if you have one of the 6 or an 8, if you open it up, you'll see these little spots here where the pea didn't develop, every time. I was at the research center in Lacombe and the guy showed us that one time. And he's right, I went and tried to disprove him, and every time you open one up, if it's an odd, if it's an even number, there's one that was aborted. And the boron does the same type, similar type of thing as it does in canola. You need to have boron in the plant to fill that. Some of Adele's work that he did here is chickpeas. Yeah, the difference in root development on peas just by adding boron. Same thing on beans. Difference between by adding boron. Wheat as well. You have boron deficiencies. I like this one. Hopefully I don't steal some of your slides as well. Okay, because I didn't get the stuff from him. But I like this one here. These ones on the left here, on the left picture, which one of these, the left or the right heads, have enough or missing boron? On the green heads on the left. I think it's the left side, the bigger heads or the smaller heads that are lacking boron. Correct. Just like we learned about copper many years ago, and everyone applies copper very well now, or should if they haven't been listening. Lack of boron causes higher risks of ergot. You need boron to move that copper into the head. So lots of people that still have ergot problems and are addressing their copper, odds are they didn't have enough boron in you too, is the other side of things. This is what Russell's got to help with, the Sinalta boron. It's what, quarter pound per liter boron actual? Half pound. Okay, so we're going most of our stuff at 2 liters an acre on cereals, depending on where our levels are, and 4 on canola. If we get below 1 ppm, it's kind of what we've been doing. We've heard a lot of stuff over the years saying, Canola Council's got articles out saying that boron doesn't work.
Russell,
Cents out of boron.
is that an actual half a pound of product, or is that equivalent to a half a pound?
No, an actual,
It's a half a pound of actual per
yeah.
liter. Thank you.
So the canola council say that it doesn't work, and I agree with them 100%. The way they're doing it will never work. They're using the granulated boron, 10%, 12% boron, at a pound an acre. So you divide that out and figure out you're getting a granular every 12 feet or so. That's what it works out to. So it's up Mike Linsky showed in his research. And boron is that'd be on a 10-inch raw, 10-inch spacing. Boron in the granular form is extremely toxic. Anywhere that granular hits, it's going to slope that, nuke that seed. And then the boron might travel out about 4 inches from each side of that granule. So basically, every foot and 12 feet, you'll have enough boron, but the third of those nuked because it's too toxic. So anytime we apply, so basically on that 12-foot row, there's 11 feet of that has no boron, so it's never going to work. The other side of things that they do is they foliar apply boron. Foliar applied boron works great if you have your levels up. I've tried it many times, but if you don't have your levels of your boron up in your plant, you can spray on as much boron as you want. It won't translocate to new leaves, and it will not give you yield on. You can spray on Russell Love Study 20 liters an acre of foliar boron, you'll spray it every 4 days to maintain it, but that's about the only way you can get it. So if you have a boron deficiency, or any deficiency in nutrients, foliars do help, but you have to cure it, you have to deal with it first. It needs boron throughout the life cycle of the plant, and it has to be able to uptake it, is what I've found. We've even had boron levels of 4 liters an acre on wheat gave us 8-9 bushels on a 50 bushel crop. So up to 20% yield increase by boron on wheat by applying it. So if you need boron, it works. If you don't need boron, it won't work, basically is what I'm telling you. We have to use the right source at the right
Going
time.
back to the granular boron, so I've got a client that he dealt with the retail kept putting that pound of boron through a granular, broadcast on hay ground. So we're talking high calcium, high pH. 10 years, pound of granular boron for 10 years. And we finally reached 1 ppm after 10 years. So after 10 years, all that money he spent is finally going to give him a tiny payback, but he's on heavy ground, he needs it even higher yet. The cost of that granular boron over 10 years is roughly $90 an acre that he spent. Because you're looking at $9 for 1 pound of nutrition for granular. And like Jordan was saying, you're only getting it here and here and here. After 10 years, you might start seeing a response.
The other side of things is it's very leachable. It's even more leachable than what nitrogen is. So you get some really big runoff years, really wet years, you'll lose it. The advantage of what Abdel's got here at the Snelter boron is it's a sodium borate, so it breaks down slowly, it releases slowly. Works good, anyone can use it, dry guys or liquid guys. You can add it to your burn, into your Roundup application. Can't put it on living crop or living plants, so I have to put on before. It could be streamed on with liquid fertilizer, it could be fertigated on, it could be sidebound with liquid, lots of different uses. So it works for anyone's application. And as far as the burn-off goes, no compatibility issues with any chemicals I've found. So basically, the only ones I would caution against is dry granulars and like your expresses or pre-pass flex or something like that. They just have to be dissolved in water before you so in other words, put them in before you add the Snelter boron. If you put it in and the water's really cold, the boron at first, they may have problems reacting. You get a little bit of scum in the tank, but if it's put in first, it's no problem. And then it's fine. So no issues. I've sprayed thousands and thousands of liters of it now.
Could you coat drill blend, or with a drill blend, say potash with?
You can go up to a liter. Like you mean liquid side?
No dry.
No, it's a liquid, so you can't add it to dry.
can't.
If you're gonna add a dry side, they have perfuse, but you're still not gonna address the boron as well as you are with the Snelter. So, use something like perfuse as in coating your granules with boron, and then using this as well would be a good combination.
Put in with your burnout in that case. So you don't need to put it with your blend, but put it with your burnout ahead of seeding.
Around it, yeah, you put it with whatever you're burning your crop off with.
Yeah. Yeah. We've never had an issue.
So did you see, put it in first?
With the dry granules, like if you're using your SG type products, I'd make sure that they're dissolved into water first before you add it in, but this is a cautionary thing. Just to make sure it's reactive with the hydrogen in the water before you add the boron. We have had one, my uncle did it, but my uncle kind of screws up everything, so he had some scumming in his I don't know if he even mixed, I don't know how he does it, but knowing him, he's dumped to the top of the tank. But no, I've never had an issue myself. I'm all liquid, 100% liquid. Well, not 100% liquid, I still use dry potash, but I use all mixed TNT for starter, and then I sideband liquid N and liquid S, a little bit of liquid S and 10-4. I use, and I actually put my smelted boron in with my 28 to the side. That's what I'm doing in my own ground. Guys I custom spray for, they're using smelted boron, which is all of them. I just mix it in, they burn off, they don't have the capabilities to put it this side. You can go up to liter in furrow, smelted boron. After that, you could have a toxicity issue. So that's your maximum required, maximum allowed in furrow. And of all the products I've tried, this was actually probably, between this and the calcium gypsum combination, these are the ones that gave me the best return.
So what you're using it with your 28, and you put it to the side,
Correct.
inch away, whatever.
I'm half inch or something.
Like how much are you putting on?
I put on up to 8 liters in places. I've tried, but most of our stuff's put on 4.
So that's enough separation, huh?
Yeah,
So what if you're going directly to zero?
that liter max.
Okay.
Yeah, liter max direct to 0. And I mean, it'd probably be more sensitive if you're 30-inch roll of corn or something, way more sensitive. Probably a third of a liter, quarter of a liter, if you're doing something like that. So basically, liter based on 10-inch spacing, we're figuring it out, which is kind of the average for most cereal crops. So your concentration's a lot higher the wider row spacing you go. So I'd caution anyone seeing with a planter, your rates would be less.
Corn and barley, you need to watch for the boron because they're very sensitive crops. But barley responds very well to boron in the ground, so if you don't address the boron early on in the barley, you pay for it to yield later on.
Just another question about that. Put it at 28. Is there any settling out issues? It's simple.
No issues at all. It's really well.
My system is like that, I have a liquid system.
Yeah.
Puts it on about an inch away from zero.
Yeah, perfect. That's what I'm doing. Like my own stuff at home, we're doing 30 pounds, 35 pounds a head is my upfront application. Actually is all I put down. And then I sideband sideband the smelted boron with some 10-30 roll as well as my starter in roll. Is what we're doing with humic acid. And then if weather permits, I'll put on another 30 pounds in. I'm a really low end user. I split apply mine. So this is going down standard rated. So it's very concentrated if I'm at up to 6 liters compared to, because we're putting down 12 gallons, 14 gallons of sideband. I'm a very low nutrient, traditional nutrient user. So I'm going to touch a little bit on humics, just to kind of, one of the other things we played with as well. We're doing the soil amendment side. I kind of got onto this kick. We've talked a little bit about boron. We talked a lot about calcium. But trying to amend soils and fix it all. It comes from Russell's hometown or home country, I guess. There's a lot of ground down in that country that grows nothing. It's very low pH. Before they can grow it, they can't even grow anything without liming or applying gypsum with it. And lots of stuff down there, they're saying that when they to get that soil unlocked and getting it to start to grow, they have to do it in three different steps. They have to make sure they have enough carbon applied, boron, and calcium. So when they're adding the 3 of them together, they're actually getting a 1 + 1 + 1, giving them a 6 to 8 type material. So the combination of them all kind of works. So that's where I got into the humic side of things. So we started playing with different humates. It's the cheapest form of carbon I can add, that I could add. So basically what we started doing it. But anyone here that knows anything or done anything with humics, basically it's just a very fine layer on top of your coal. Coal seams were formed millions of years ago from vegetation rotted underground for lack of oxygen. This provides energy for conservation of CO2 and H2O into sugars and starches. These materials, there's lignite, laranite, coal, are the universal depot of carbon energy and also possess a big biological potential that makes them the source of ATP for the biosphere. So the humics, has anyone ever worked in the garden or done anything close in the hands and you're working in the soil and you get that real fine, rich, black layer, beautiful little fine layer in your hands? That's humic. That's natural humic is built by your ground. Our ground, your guys down here will be a lot browner than we are, but humic is decomposition of organic matter and creates humic in your soil. So this is basically like adding that rich soil into your ground. So that's what it is. We always worry about the NPK and S and micronutrients of the plant, but you got to remember 96.6% of the plant is actually carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So adding the carbon to it, we're worried about the carbon is very important. So I stole this one off of Dr. Meir. I don't know if anyone's ever heard him talk, but he's a world-renowned humic specialist out of Idaho State. Idaho State. It was Idaho State, retired now. But he says there's not just the 4 R's, it's the 5 R's. Right fertilizer, right time, right place, and the right humic as well. Not all humics are created equal. Adele's got a real dandy one that he's using in the TNT. We've had awesome luck with. Do you have that commercially available in any other aspect? But not all humics are created equal. A dry humic, when I started playing with it, actually gave me less results and 300 pounds an acre than a pound of processed good humic. So they're not all created equal. What got me really excited about the humics at the sodium area, I'm taking one of Dr. Meir's pictures he had sent me. But this here is actually a potato field. This is, I think this one is overseas from what he told me. But right here you can see how white the ground is, the sodium, the salts. By adding humic, you got potatoes to grow. So this is that same patch in the field. This light purple is high sodium. He did, I think if I remember right, he said he got 200 bags more than he would have on the check. So very substantial yield increase by adding humics. It helps buffer salts. So the combination of doing it something like a gypsum to move salt and then using a humic to buffer it and adding the boron has given us some huge yield results. This is sugarcane stuff as well. This is on high mag soil. So really high mag, we're using humics to help buffer some of the mag, make the calcium more available in the soil. Huge results. This basically the effects of humics on soil and plant metabolism. Metabolization of micros, iron, zinc, manganese, and some macronutrients, potassium, calcium, phosphorus. Buffer salts, reducing burn. I'll use this for streaming on UAN. We'll put a humic acid in, spray it on in batches up to 30 gallons an acre of UAN on my VR program. With 3 gallons of humics, I put in 1 gallon of humic for every 10 gallons of UAN. 25-30 degrees outside and still on burning leaves. It really buffers the salts well. Works really good to hold it that side. Forms a bond of fertilizer and tie-up. Increase crop production by 10 to 40%. I've seen these wild cards at 40% and ground that basically grows nothing. But you have to address some of the other nutrients as well. Enhance plant nutrient translocation, accelerate the ripening period for 5 to 10 days. enhance soil and plant health.
What concentration of humic?
Stuff I'm using, probably if the Dell's a little more this year, you'll have a little more available. It's low, it's a pound an acre in liquid. So it'd be a 12% solution. 12% solution. Increased water sequestration by 11%. That's kind of a neat one. Adding carbon to the soil. Carbon's a neat product. It actually holds 40,000 times its weight in water. So having some carbon in the soil helps hold water. Increase the content of nitrates and other harmful substances, and improves fruit nutritional quality, and increase plant resistance to disease, frost damage, and drought. So very important in the cycle trend on the soil amendment side. Like I said before, the reason I'm kind of telling you about this is when you add that combination together. This is on some ground. I'll actually go back to the slide and show you where it was. I had a picture of it on one of the other ones. We were pointing it out. But we had a 37 bushel an acre response of canola by applying lime, gypsum, boron, and 65 pounds in, 77 bushel canola. Just by applying the combination of them, getting everything to working sync with each other. So I was using gypsum to disperse some of the sodium, lime to build my calcium, boron because it is low, and humates I was using to hold it all together, help buffer it all. It seems to be huge results. This one I got a cheap, free gypsum, so that helped pretty good. Lime, boron, humate cost me $67 an acre, $16 an acre, just under 67, 80 or whatever, $16 an acre, plus application. I got 37 bushels an acre response on this trial. So one of the first ones I played with.
How much water did it take to produce that?
I'm dry land.
That's what I mean, yeah.
So this year we had 14 inches of rain during the growing season. That year it'll be about 22 inches total. So you got lots of you guys down here got some way better tools to use than I can. You can add water if you need to. We can't do that. Our rain varies very substantial. Last year we had anywhere from 2.1 inches to 8 inches of rain during the growing season. Depending on where my ground was. So varying results all over. But our water use efficiency is very good when you start getting this into, because of the fact that we're populating the soil with calcium and giving it more airspace for it to hold more moisture and have better water utilization. Dispersing your magnesiums and sodiums and making your soil not so hard helps huge. So I'm going to show you. I'm actually done mine. I went through it fairly fast. But I'm going to go back here. I'm going to show you what that was. So that trial there was actually done in 2016. So this is it right here. Where you see that pH change. That was right in that corner is where I did it. So I don't got the legend up here, but green is 7 pH. This yellow here would be about 6.4. The rest of my fields all, sorry, that's base calcium. Sorry, base calcium. I went to the wrong one. See in the pH as well. The greens would be the 7s. So I'm getting my pH where it should be. I actually got one shot here. I haven't dispersed the mag yet. It's actually a magnesium problem. It's actually got less calcium than up here in the greens, but it's drove my pH up. I did another trial over here on this field 4 years ago. So I got my pH up, and I did another trial over here. And then applied the whole field again. So liming does work. On the liming front, there's going to be some neat things coming out over the next few years. Sitting on the liming initiative for Alberta, it sounds like they might put a freight incentive back in. We're working on it. The other thing that they're working on is setting up a program for producers to be able to go for producers to be able to go and or apply for a grant to do it, to apply it. So when you're applying for this grant, that will be a chance for us to be able to finance it over a longer term. So if you say you spend $200 an acre applying, doing a soil amendment, they're going to follow some of the stuff done out of the states we're working on right now, where you take that, you actually go ahead and you finance over 5 years. So it'll be part of the grant of the AFSC. We're talking about doing that. So in other words, you're paying $40 an acre a year over a 5-year type program. And we're trying to write up a blank program to follow some of the other stuff out of the states too, so that if you do that on rented land, it carries all over to the next landlord. So when you're doing the rented land, you lose the land, you spend the $200 an acre to do it, and you lose that land. The landowner has to actually pay you back for the next tenant. So there's things coming out that can make a big difference in the way it is. I'm very happy to be on the leading edge of that, or part of it anyways. So that's what I got there. Hopefully